Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the webinar today. My name is Tricia Thomas. I'm a partner here at Fourlane, and for this session, we're going to talk about inventory mapping and why it's important. Okay, before I get started on today's topic, I always want to remind everyone that we do have a YouTube channel. So if you've missed any of our webinars, you can always find them on our channel at youtube.com/Fourlane. We've got over 200 videos out there and more being added every day. Also remember, you can subscribe to that channel, so that way you get notifications when we do upload new videos. We would also love to connect with you through our Facebook group. Our Facebook group name is Fourlane QuickBooks Enterprise. There's also always lots of great information in that group, so please feel free to join. So we heard our clients. They have told us the frustration that they have experienced when it comes to needing to reach out when they need technical support. So we created a on-demand support plan. So how it works is it's $25 per QuickBooks user per month for up to 5 users. The price drops to $20 per month for 6 users or more. So once we get you signed up, whenever you need any kind of technical help, all it takes is a simple email. So the email just needs to include what's going on, what the urgency level is, and when is the best time to contact you. And then what you can expect from us is a return email setting up a time. That way we can get you taking care of whatever's going on in your QuickBooks file. You can see all the different areas that we can support when it comes to license problems, software installation, any kind of QuickBooks errors. So if you guys want more information on that demand support plan, please just reach out and we'll get you set up. Okay, so as I said, for today's session, we're going to talk about inventory mapping and why it's important. So we're going to walk through that item setup itself and kind of talk about the different types of items that you can use in QuickBooks and why we would choose each type of item. We're going to talk about why that mapping matters, what it affects, and then we're going to look at some results on when we map an item, what happens. Okay, so let's come over to our QuickBooks file. So let's start talking about the item setup itself. So inside of QuickBooks, there are lots of different items. Now, of course, this is the enterprise product. That's what we're always focused on, is showing you guys the features inside of the enterprise product. So I'm going to take you through and I'm going to talk to you about the different types of items. So let's kind of start at the top. You've got a service type item. And a service type item is used to track different types of labor or maybe installation that you have on your projects. You've got an inventory part. So an inventory part are items that are purchased for stock and the company wants to maintain a quantity on hand and asset value. Next, you have an inventory assembly. So an assembly is used when you put together individual items, or sometimes called components or raw goods, and you create a new item, sometimes referred to as a sub-assembly or a finished good that is then sold to your customer. A non-inventory part are items that are purchased and sold, but the quantity on hand isn't tracked. The cost for that item is taken up front when it is purchased. The other charge item is used when you want to invoice for a miscellaneous item, such as a delivery fee. You want to include that in your invoice. The subtotal item is used when you want to total groups of items on an invoice. So I've seen some clients like to take their invoices or take their estimates and they want to subtotal per section. So they will have an installation section, they'll have a materials section, and they want to subtotal by each section so their customers can see that, and you can do that with that subtotal item. Okay, the group item. So this is used when you want to bundle individual items to sell. Big difference between a group and an assembly item is a group item does not hold a quantity on hand. So there's not a way to create a group on the front end like you can on assembly and have quantity on hand. Okay. The discount item is used to give your customer a discount on an invoice, and you can do those different percentages, 10%, 5%. So you want to give them an overall discount of that invoice. The payment item is exactly what it sounds like. So you're collecting a payment from your customer and you want to post that to their account. The sales tax item is used when your state requires you to collect sales tax for that invoice. So it's set up as a percentage of what that state requires. And then the sales tax group is used when there are multiple sales tax that need to be collected, such as a state tax, a county tax. You can take all of those sales tax items and put them into a group. Okay, so that's our different types of items. So I want to show you, I'm going to walk through two different item setups and mapping. I'm going to show you the setup of a service item, and I'm going to show you the setup of an inventory item. That way we can see the differences. So let's start over here with the service item. And so, of course, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to create a name, and I'm just going to call this install labor. You have the option to make any item a sub item. And so it's a sub item inside of that type. So you can see you've got a drop down of all of my different service types. I can't make this a sub item of, for example, an inventory type. It has to be the same type to make it a sub item of that group. Okay, version 23 introduced categories. So now you can group your items to keep your inventory organized, as well as being able to report on those different categories. So unit of measure is used when you purchase in one unit of measure, such as a case, and you sell in a different unit of measure, such as each. So QuickBooks will keep track of that for you and keep what that quantity on hand is for all of those cases in, so that way you can sell in each or case and know what you have on hand. This button here is a very important box. This is saying that I purchase and sell this item. What we call it is making your item double-sided. So again, meaning that I purchase as well as sell this item. So this is very important when it comes to being able to track job cost at line level. You need to make sure your items are set up as double-sided. So without it being double-sided, what we're saying is the item is only used on customer invoices. I do not purchase this item, or for example, subcontractor, I do not contract this service out. So we're going to go ahead and check the box so you can see now we opened up and we've got more options. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy over my purchase description, and you'll see it'll copy it over. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and enter a cost of this item, and we're just going to say our install labor cost us $125. Your expense account, so this is when this item is purchased, or in the example of an inventory item, when it is used, what expense account should be affected? So what cost this $125? What expense account do I want to use? In this case, I'm going to choose, for example, I'm going to use subcontractors. Since I'm saying that this is for install labor, I'm going to choose my cost of goods sold for subcontractors. Okay, you've got a preferred vendor. So this is more used in the inventory aspect of who do I order this from. By setting this up, it will do some automation for you. When you go to create a purchase order for this item, it'll go ahead and bring that vendor up for you. So just giving you more, the more data you put in, the more options you have for reporting and automation. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's put in a sales price, and we're just going to say that we charge $250 an hour for our install labor. And then our income account is, this is when we use this item on any type of customer invoice, customer transaction, what income account do we want that revenue reflected on? And so we're going to choose our subcontractor labor income. Okay, so this is when you set up a service item. This is kind of the steps. This is kind of standard when you set up every item, but now I want to show you the difference when you're setting up an inventory item. We'll go ahead and save this, and now we're going to go through the same steps, but we're going to create an inventory item. Okay, so you can see it kind of looks the same. We've got the same fields, but now we've got even more that we can populate data in. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use my widget. I'm going to create a 1. I'm going to copy that name down here for my description. Okay, we still have our sub item. So now you can see that it's a sub item of my inventory parts. So only the types can I choose the sub level of the same type. Manufacturing part number. So if we've got where it's a different manufacturing part number, we can include that in there so we have that. And of course, we have our categories and unit of measure. We're going to go ahead and we're going to put our cost, and we'll say that our widget cost us $75. You can see that it created a default cost of goods sold. So this is what happens in an inventory setup. You have a default cost of goods sold, and you have a default inventory asset. Okay, I can change it if I want, but this is the default settings inside of QuickBooks to populate these for you. So I'm going to choose that this is going to be a job materials for my cost of goods sold. Again, I can choose a preferred vendor, say this is where I purchased this item from. I have alternate vendors, so I can choose, and you can see that I have to start posting in here. You can set up alternate vendors if you order it from other vendors and what their price is. It'll keep track for you. You've got your inventory asset value, GL account, and you got reorder. So this tells the system I want to keep so many on hand before I want to reorder. And so this is when we talk about the options of putting more data in. Now I have reports that I can run to say, based on what I have in stock, based on what I have on sales order, what do I need to reorder? And the system will generate a purchase order for us. Okay, sales costs, we're going to say we're going to sell our widget for $150, and I'm going to have this go to materials income. Okay, so that is our difference when it comes to setting up our items. So I want to just show you that. So let me go ahead and hit OK here. So now I want to talk about the importance of the mapping. So when we talk about the, setting up and choosing an expense account and choosing an income account, where we're going to see that reflection is on our profit and loss. And then, of course, if it's an inventory item, on our balance sheet for our inventory asset. So when we set up an item, we're telling the system, when this item is purchased, I want a certain expense account. Should be in my direct expenses. And then when this item is used in a customer invoice, I want my revenue reflected up here. So that's very important that we have them set up. So for example, if you get a bill from a subcontractor that completed a project, you want the cost of that bill to not only be linked to that customer job, but you want that to be reflected in your cost of goods sold so that you can see, what you have in direct expenses for your subcontractors. Okay? So same thing on inventory item. You want to, when the item is purchased, you want to increase your inventory asset. And when the item is sold, you want to decrease that asset and increase your materials cost of goods sold. So if the mapping isn't setting up correctly, before those items are used in a transactions, your financials will not be reflected correctly. Okay, so now I want to walk through this scenario and I want to show you guys a great example of you're going to see the results and the reflection of an item that is not set up correctly. Okay, so here's my profit and loss, and I want you to look at right now we have in subcontracted labor a little over $15,000, and then in our subcontractor cost a little over $5,800. So I'm going to come back to my item list and I'm going to create a new service item. Okay, and I'm just going to call this subcontractor labor. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy that down to my description, and then I'm going to choose an account. I'm going to choose my subcontractor labor account. Okay, So what I want you guys to see is on that item, at the very beginning of this, I told you there's a very important thing that we always recommend for our clients, and I didn't do this in this example, is I did not make the item double-sided. So what I'm telling the system is I'm only going to use this item in customer invoices. Okay, but I, in my projects, pay a subcontractor to complete my projects. So I'm going to go and I'm going to create a bill. I'm going to use that same item. And I created myself as a subcontractor. I'm just going to create a bill in here. And I'm going to create it for $20,000 because I want you guys to be able to see the big dollar difference. And I'm going to take it off here. And I'm going to choose that item I created. And I'm going to choose that $20,000. If you were doing this, subcontractor, what we would recommend, of course, is linking it to that job so that you can see, where that breakdown of that 20,000 goes. If it's for multiple jobs, you can 100% have, each dollar amount going to separate jobs. Okay, and of course, if we're using classes, we want to choose our classes. So for this example, our focus is looking at the results of incorrect mapping of items. I'm going to save this. Okay, and now I want to take you guys back to our profit and loss, and I want to show you the results. Okay, so now look at my subcontracted labor income account. Now I have a debit balance of $4,500, and my actual subcontractor cost did not change. So the expectation of I created a vendor bill to account for $20,000 cost that I had on a project is not reflected correctly on my profit and loss because I did not set up the mapping correctly on my item. Okay, so as you can see, the item mapping drives our financial reporting on both the cost and the sales side, and that makes it so critical that the setup is done correctly before you start using that transaction, so that way you can trust your financials and they are reflected accurately. Okay, so another piece I want to talk to you guys about is when we talk about that double-sided item, we talk about using that and why we would want to make it double-sided. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to correct this, and that way we can use that same item. Okay, so I want to talk to you about how this is reflected and how this is important with making an item double-sided when it comes to job costing. Okay, so when it comes to an estimate, so I'm going to show you guys, I created an estimate so we can see it. And actually, I'm going to go to my customer center. So I created a estimate, and give me 1 second to see where my okay. So I created an estimate, and you can see that I broke it down by different items that are included in this estimate. And so what this estimate is being used for is for us to track what we believe our cost is going to be for each of these items. So being able to do the removal of our remodel, the installation of our remodel, putting in the door frames, installing carpet, flooring, and then installing a door. And so you can see that it's broken down by our quantity, by our cost, and then I marked it up 25%. So this is what my customer sees, is what the total is. Okay, so I want to show you guys when it comes to making an item double-sided, why this is best practice. So if we come over here and we look at our budget versus actual, and I'm going to choose that same project, you can see here that the estimate is broken down by an estimated cost and revenue for each of those line items. Okay, so when we have our items double-sided, we can now create cost for each item. So this allows that project manager to see, am I staying within the budget? Do I have any wiggle room in any of my areas? And so I'm going to use this carpet installation. I'm going to go ahead and come back, and I'm going to use that item. I'm going to verify that we have it set up. Okay, so I've got my carpet installation set up. We have it set up as job expenses on my cost side, and we have it as subcontractor labor on our income side. So I'm going to go and create a bill, and I'm going to do it for this carpet so that you guys can see, using it at the line level, I can do my estimating and I can see that I'm in budget for that item. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to create a bill. And we'll just use my same TT here. So we'll create a new one. Okay. And we're going to say that our bill is $1,000. We're going to choose that item, carpet. And we're going to say that it was $125. Actually, I think I have 8 as my quantity. Oh, it wants to change my price. Okay, and where I got this 8 from is back on this estimate. I said that the install for the carpet was going to be 8 hours. Okay, so that's just where I got that from. So I'm saying I'm choosing my item, carpet. I'm saying it's a quantity of 8. It's costing me $125 an hour, and so that gives us my $1,000. I want to link it to that job so that I can see it is attached to that job. So this is telling the system this cost is for this project. Attach that $1,000 to an actual cost to this project. Okay, so, oh, I did 10,000. So let's go recalculate. Take me to 1,000. Okay, so now when we come back to our budget versus actuals, we can see that for our line level of carpet, we were estimating $1,200. So far, we have actual cost of $1,000. So we still have $200 in our budget if needed for our carpet installation. So you can see that to get there, I had to have my item set up as double-sided so that I could use it in a vendor bill and have it linked to this project. Okay, so you can see that not only is it affecting my financials, but it also allows me to be able to track job costs on our projects at line level. So it's very important that we make sure the setup is done correctly from the beginning. And this is why when we are looking at file reviews, this is one of the main things that we look at is we look at all of the item mapping. We're making sure that when it comes to your GL accounts for your income, that we choose an income account. We're looking at the GL accounts on the cost side to make sure that an expense account has been selected, and we're going to give you feedback on that. We want to make sure that because of the impact that the mapping has, that this is a focus on files and making sure that you can trust your financials because your item mapping has been done correctly. Okay. So I want to look over at questions, kind of take a break and see if we have any questions so far. And then we can, if we have some time left, we can look at some other mapping. So let me come over to our questions, see what we've got here. Okay, so the only question that we have so far is the request to do a deep dive in advanced pricing and price rules, and we absolutely will, David. So we have a whole listing of webinars that we have coming up, and I will talk to my team and make sure that we have that one added. And then when we send out on Monday what that topic is, you can make sure you join for that one. But I will definitely make note of that to make sure that we have that in our series coming up. Okay, so far that's all the questions I've got. So let's kind of just take a look at some other mapping features. So next week, I'm gonna talk to you guys about inventory and the effects with sales orders and purchase orders, and kind of talk about why we would recommend starting from those areas and look at the reporting. I wanna kind of talk about, when it comes to your item mapping, and we talk about the more data we put in the file, the more reporting opportunities that you have. So for an inventory part, for example, I kind of just talked on high level of the information that you can put in there, but you've got other options when it comes to your inventory setup. So for example, you've got custom fields. And custom fields is used when you've got information that is important to your company that you want to report on, but it's not a standard field inside of QuickBooks. So you can create a custom field so you can report on that information. And QuickBooks is great about having custom field options, so you can do it at inventory level, you can do it at customer and transaction level, at vendor and transaction level, and then at employee also. Okay, so you can see for this one, they want to track the color of their items and the material. You have lots of options when it comes to setting up custom fields. You label it what you want to see, and then you decide on the kind of text. So you can see that you can have any text, you can have numbers, you can have dates, you can have multiple choice. I always tell my clients, if you can, stay away from using any text. And the reason why is because it's harder to report on that. So you think if someone put, red as a color, for example, and then someone put pink or light red, those are two different texts, and you have to type in the words that you want to report on when you put any text. So if you really wanted to capture red and light pink in one, you're not going to have that option if you did it as other text. I like the multiple choice. It gives you that drop down, and you don't have to worry about someone spelling something wrong or doing it different. They have to choose what the expected multiple choice options are. Okay. So that's your custom fields. And then of course we've got our edit markup, where we tell the system, what is your markup on this item based on your cost, and the preferred vendor I told you guys about, and then our minimum and max. If you have, for example, advanced inventory features turned on, you would see more options. So you would have your inventory sites on here, so you could see what you have per site. And a lot of people in the inventory management space prefer to work in the module for inventory. So I really like this a lot. It gives you detail about your items, and you can see history on purchasing them, what we've done, what our average cost is, what the markup is, and of course what we have on hand versus available. Okay, and we'll dive into available next week. So I'm hoping you guys join that one, because when it comes to inventory, I get very excited and I like to share that knowledge with you guys. So I'm going to pop back over and see if there's any final questions before I let everyone get back to their day. Nope, that is the only question for today, is to the advanced pricing. So thank you guys so much for joining today. I hope you learned something. If you want any more information, of course, always reach out and we'll be glad to hop on and chat. If it comes to, hey, we don't know if our mapping is correct, we would love for someone to take a look at it. We can absolutely do that with you. Just send us an email and we'll get it all set up for you. So thank you so much for joining me today. And again, reach out if you need any more information about anything that I shared. Y'all have a good rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.